Hello everybody, this is Starman, and welcome back to Let's Play Betrayal at Krondor. Well, this is going to be a rather unusual chapter because, and let this be a cautionary tale for why you always make sure that your sound equipment is working before you start recording a video, because I was having an issue with the front ports for the audio and the microphone on my computer, and when I started recording this chapter I didn't realize that the microphone was not working. So this chapter was recorded entirely without sound. So the whole what we're going to do in this chapter, I'm recording audio over this while watching my video, and oh, we've run into a group of more to hell. But yeah, this chapter I'm going to be doing commentary over the footage I filmed. And we're going to have quite a bit that happens in this one. We are going back to exploring the area between Tanier's, Egley, and up toward the Temple of Silman, before heading into the Dimwood to finish things up. And finally getting to the quest that I mentioned before that I thought about doing in Chapter 2, but it turns out it doesn't open until Chapter 3. But yeah, I have done, if I may say so, a rather good job of building up this party. Owen is a beast at this point, magically speaking. And he's not a bad combatant either. Though in retrospect, I now wish I held off on doing some of these build your party stats quests until we had James in the party, because if you can build James up in a similar manner, having him doing the combat training, you got a guy with 5 speed who can just run around, start striking enemies down, one-shotting them. It's pretty fearsome. But live and learn. So yeah, you'll note I have an obscene amount of gold at this point, more than enough to get through the rest of the game. And yeah, just one more arrow, not enough. But yeah, there's a surprising number of ambushes in the Egley Tanier's area. And we won't see most of them at first, but the funny part is that if you're on the road going past town, you'll get jumped twice. If you actually go into the town, you completely bypass them. So there's the Franklin's house. And yep, I'm going to take the side road into Egley, where unfortunately not much else has happened. You don't get any new dialogue from Devon, but you do make 165 gold, so business is clearly doing well if they have that kind of entertainment budget. Yep, the same conversation about Seems business around here is picking up. Our first new time resident. Actually, this was not new dialogue, but basic gist of the conversation is that Devon discovered some madman trying to claw up one of the graves in the graveyard. He put him up in one of the houses. So you can go talk to this guy, but nothing much comes of the conversation. And there's another glitch in the conversation, because it says he's in the last house on the right side of town before you head north. He is in fact in the last house on the left before you head south, which would make it the first house when you go south. And yeah, this building we won't be able to get into until Chapter 6. And yeah, despite him saying that the townsfolk will come back, the townsfolk, half the town is still abandoned. A man answered James Knox. His face was flushed, and there were beads of sweat on his brow as he threatened to race each other down his face in any moment. He was breathing heavily. "You come about them, haven't you?" he asked, wide-eyed. "Well?" After several long minutes of careful probing, James was able to ascertain that the man believed he had released some evil spirits from a couple of local graveyards. The more he spoke of his dealings with the undead, the more frightened he became, until at last, shivering violently, he closed the door and retreated back into the relative safety of his house. So, yeah. We of course, are not going to go digging graves up because we're not ghouls, and because we already got everything useful out of all the graves that we've encountered anyway. At least everything useful I remember that is urgent. And yeah, there's the historian's house, but he says nothing to us about the history of Sephanon and what went on there. And nothing much for us in 10 years, but earning a little bit more gold that we don't need at the inn, or tavern, actually. I guess you can't... Well, actually, no, there is a place to sleep there. It's called Tom's Tavern. And let's see, I believe there is an ambush of Queegian soldiers coming up. Yep. It's funny seeing the Queegian mercenary soldiers being dressed as pirates, because at the time that this game came out, they did not discuss Queeg in great detail in the Rift War books that had been out at that point, and then later stories revealed that it was basically ancient Rome as run by pirates, with a whole lot of people in togas and a very Machiavellian political system. And yep, you ran into the landmine, and oh, you're not dead, shockingly. And unfortunately, by moving there, I eliminated any reason for those guys to move over the mine. Which is where Owen is going to get clever. Kaboom! Yeah, I apologize. Well, I shouldn't, but I imagine that I've made the fighting systems, or the fighting in this game, really redundant because... You know, goodness me, how quickly am I blowing through these guys? I mean, the fights with 5 or more soldiers are meant to be something of a challenge, but at this point, it really isn't. But I'm hoping that will improve in the later chapters, where we start fighting creatures which can do a little bit of magic on their own, and the creatures that are immune to certain spells. Anyway, we're heading back south around the bend, back to the crossroads of Krondor, and then we will cut back and discover, oh hey, there's these 2 ambushes that you miss if you go through the village. And yeah, I finally decided to sell off some of the excess junk that I'd acquired, because I really don't need that many armor hammers. I did elect to save that book in the desperate bid to try and increase everybody's defense skill a little bit more. In Owen's case, it proved quite futile. And yeah, I think I'm getting ready to sell the Napta off, if memory serves. And yeah, it's at this point that I discovered that, oh, I'm almost used up all my whittle stones. And yeah, I have well stocked myself with healing potions, or restoratives. Not that it matters too much, because, well, you'll be seeing shortly that I will have opportunity to use them because I did something very stupid. Well, I got impatient, really. And here we go, another group of 5 Queegian mercenaries, which... yeah, Gambit of the Eight is a bit tricky, and I do love the name of it because it is... The whole name is based around the fact that you have 8 spaces around you, and it's a bit of a gamble. You're predicting where the enemy is going to come toward you when you're casting it. Well, it's a bit of a gamble unless you've got a spell like Invitation. And bravo, James, you finally hit something. And that fellow is limping very badly. He can only move 1 space at a time. And just for the heck of it, we go looking for more loot we don't need, and it just occurred to me how very odd it is that that one Queegian mercenary has a bottle of Luton's concentrate when he's not a spellcaster. And yeah, at that point I remember that you can't use Napta on your arrows. You have to buy the flaming arrows special. You can't make them yourself. More's the pity. And yep, there's an ambush here, but we do manage to sneak past it. Because our stealth right now is insane. With the Weed Walkers, I think everybody in the party has like 114% stealth bonus. So we'll just walk on through that one. And there's the cave that we cannot enter and cannot do anything in, which we have encountered before. And there's the Temple of Silban. Stop in briefly, but unfortunately the dialogue hasn't changed. It's the same thing from the fat assistant who caused all the drama earlier, and yeah, okay, can't do it. So yeah, at this point, it's a question of do we go west of Hawks Hollow and go explore the area around Yabin we haven't been to in this chapter, or go to the Dimwood, and I opted for we'll go to the Dimwood. And I did this so I could go and do a quest, which I mentioned before, that I thought you could maybe do in Chapter 2. It turns out it doesn't open until Chapter 3. And I didn't come into the Dimwood in Chapter 2 because consulting my old copy of the Betrayal at Krondor strategy guide, yes, they made one. It was back in the day when they still did the huge tome-like books for all these RPGs, which I guess they still do, but they've kind of been supplanted by, you know, game FAQs to some degree. Hey, more Queegian mercenaries. And these guys have the sense to go charge the magician first, for all the good it will do them. And And yeah, rather than blowing these guys up, I decided to start using Grief of 1,000 Nights to try and pacify them. Really is an underrated spell as far as these things go. And we'll let Owen rest up a bit. And it's at this point that we discover, hey, these guys had some treasure chests they were guarding. Unfortunately, I misremembered that I had come across these chests before, so they clearly must be safe, and it turns out that, well, I missed this particular group when we went through the Dimwood in Chapter 1. So, yeah, opened up one, and it blew us up, and it gave us a Nightfinger's Scroll, which is probably the most useless spell in the game. But we'll take it anyway, because we can resell those scrolls for a bit. And yeah, I did elect to heal up this time around. Miraculously, I didn't get killed trying to open this when the whole party is not fully healed, and yeah, for all that effort, a subpar suit of armor in subpar condition, and a bowstring. And it's a good thing that Goraf is as hardy as he is, because he's the only reason we didn't all get killed instantly, because, you know, as we saw in the dialogue earlier, James was critically wounded and was saying, you know, go on without me. So it takes one vial of restoratives to get him back to where he will heal on his own. And as I quickly noticed when I go to camp, Owen was critically wounded, so we have to exit and use a full complement of restoratives to get him back to where he will heal naturally on his own. Okay, so with that done, everybody can now heal on their own. And a good thing I stocked up on food before I came in here. And so we keep heading south and come across the witch's cottage from before. At least I think that was the witch's cottage from before. I don't see her well nearby, so maybe that was a different house. It honestly is easy to get lost in the Dimwood once you get outside of certain areas, but thankfully our goal in this one is pretty easy. We just have to head south until we have to head east, and then head east until we can get to the road. And hey, there's the road and more Queegian mercenaries, whom we managed to catch off guard, and there's only 4 of them, so this will be an even easier fight than normal, even with James missing his shot. And let's go ahead and paralyze these guys, who are advancing very slowly. Well, I guess that's the mercenary caution in play. At least we'll just assume that. And what the heck, Owen will go and join the fighting. And once you got 3 people dogpiling on him, the fight's pretty much over. But we will go ahead and check the loot. And again, these guys are carrying Luton's concentrate, not Newton. And yeah, nothing worth looting. But at any rate, this quest, you might remember that there's a little shop on the road south leading out of the Dimwood, but it's not really a shop. And now we can open it. A wrinkled hand pulled open the door. "Yes," croaked a little man, his frail voice cracking with age. James smiled. "We don't mean to bother you, sir. What news have you of the area?" The old man dropped his head and tears welled up in his eyes as he spoke. "Do not be deceived by what you see. The man before you is well less than half his apparent years." "If what you say is true, how could this thing have happened?" asked Owen. "It is true indeed. I was trapping east of here and stayed about a month when I found myself growing weaker by the day. I decided to return home and... Click. During this journey, I spotted a black-robed man with a snake-like face." "You think he is the source of your problems?" questioned James. The man sighed. "I wish I knew, but now what am I to do? How shall I eat? I left behind my only iron-jaw trap. I would be ever so grateful to have it returned. You shouldn't be affected if you don't stay too long." With a concerned look, James turned to Owen, then faced the man again. "We will see what we can do," he said. So, yes, we have to head into the southeastern part of the Dimwood and see if we can find this old man, he's not old, traps. And we got that subtle hint there that the snake men, the Penethians, are involved somehow. And we did manage to take a mixed group of Morid Hell and Queegian mercenaries off guard this time. And, well, James hit a target, not the one he was aiming at, but there was some success there. Although Owen just got shot as well, and you'll note that when his turn ends, there's going to be a flash of green and, flash of green and number appearing above, and that is because Owen just got poisoned by that arrow. And poison can whittle your characters down pretty quickly if you let it. Of course, depending on how the fight is going and how weak the character is, you might not be able to take time to, open up their inventory and eat a poison antidote right then. And it's kind of silly to do so anyway, because there's a chance, you just get shot again and you're poisoned again. And yeah, Owen was on fire, his insides burned like hot coals in a farrier's pot. This in sharp contrast to the numbness he felt in his mouth and lips. The poison had spread through his system and was slowly sapping his strength, draining him of everything but his will to survive. But thankfully, we've been saving this antidote for just such an emergency. Yeah, breaking open the bulb of antivenom, Owen greedily drank down the contents, immediately feeling a rush of warmth spreading through him as the silver thorn was neutralized. I didn't read the exact text there, but close enough. Now, thankfully, these guys were carrying a ton of rations. And this is good training for Chapter 7, which Chapter 7 of the game, spoiler, takes place entirely within the Dimwood region. And unless you stockpile rations before the end of Chapter 5, the only source of food you're going to have is whatever you pick off of your enemies. Because they've been going around and poisoning everything else, and trapping all the animals, and poisoning whatever game they can find. And I briefly got too clever for myself, because I remembered doing this quest before, that you can walk around the mountains safely, but there's nothing to be found in this area in Chapter 3 if you already cleared this out in Chapter 1. Because I thought this was where you had to come, and no, you just walk around and see a whole bunch of nothing here in the area behind the mountains near the waterfall on the east side, where you only encounter the one group of chests and the one path. Nice view of the waterfall, though. But yeah, it turns out that what happened to Craig the Trapper, and this will be mentioned a little bit in an encounter that we have, is that there are a group of snake priests here in the Dimwood who are using a spell to drain the life force of anybody who wanders into this area. And this is actually a neat bit of foreshadowing for the King's Buccaneer and what the Panathians are up to in that book. But here we go. Owen stumbled. He fell to one knee as a wave of nausea swept the length of his body. His head still swimming, he climbed slowly to his feet and turned to the others. There's something very strange about this place. For a moment I felt as though a great force was reaching up and sapping my strength. I felt something as well. It must be the strange force that Craig spoke of when we spoke to him. Perhaps we should turn back until we can discover the cause. Well, we actually know the cause, and James' stomach hurt. He tipped back his head and gritted his teeth, trying to fight back the nausea that he felt welling up inside him. All color drained from his face. He drank in the air in big gulps, only to expel it again in short bursts through his pursed lips. Nearby he heard the sound of retching, but didn't care to turn and look. It was enough to know that he was not the only one who had been afflicted with the sickness. But yeah, you can wander around this area for a bit, having these random attacks hit you. But it turns out you go behind the mountains, and there's the Panathians, one of whom tried to freeze Goraf with Affairs of Rhyme. The other one fought better and did a Grief of 1,000 Nights. Now, 3 spellcasters would ordinarily be a bit tricky. Thankfully, the Panathians will gang up on whoever they consider the greatest threat, which in this case is obviously Goraf. So first things first, we protect our spellcaster from damage. And we use James to try and move around, and because the rule about how you can't spellcast if somebody is standing next to you affects the enemies as well as us, so long as they're leaving Owen alone. We can have James move to wherever he is distracting the enemy, and use that to nail these guys down. And yeah, he's right behind that tree. And one more Grief of 1,000 Nights, and this becomes a cakewalk. And we'll go ahead and let Owen rest up. Although he can't actually rest up because of the magic effect. So James gets to have his fun. And yeah, it turns out these guys don't have much but a sword and some food poison. A Mordhell brooch for some reason, and some restoratives, and a lame kingdom sword, which it's very odd that the snakemen have a kingdom weapon. And Mordhell's sword makes slightly more sense, and some redweed brew. And from here... Well, Craig said something about a trap, and we do in fact have iron jaw traps. We only need to take one, but we can take the other one as well. And yeah, I'm mistakenly cast Dragon's Breath instead of Stardust, because I did not want to camp out here for obvious reasons. Owen stumbled, and yeah, here's the effect again. The puzzle worried him. Though they had escaped alive, he was still bothered by the presence of the Panathians in the area. He had no liking for the serpent folk, and their presence in the kingdom so near the battle site of Sephna unnerved Goraf a great deal. What do you think the Panathians were after, Owen? Do you think they were rooting around looking for something? With the Panathians, who can tell? No one in the kingdom knows exactly what they want, but they seem to get mixed up in nearly everything that's got a bad ending. My guess is they were trying to channel the strength they were stealing into something else. Maybe they needed power for a spell. I'm none too comfortable with the thought of that. I felt their powers when we entered the area, though I didn't know what it was I perceived. At least we've come out of there none the worse for wear. I imagine that Craig is beyond help. It's a good thing we didn't remain a month as he did. Well, I don't know about you, but I feel almost normal again. I, for one, am glad the whole affair is over. Well, not quite. We still have to get out of this part of the Dimwood. Which, no, the bridge is south of here. And we still have to go turn in the trap to Owen. And, yeah, it's been late, so... Yeah, everybody had a wounded condition, but thankfully having gotten out of the area, we can rest from that now. And from here, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump back to Craig's place. Yep. Have you brought my iron jaw trap? James nodded. We have, he said, producing the trap. Bless you, sirs, wheezed the man. I hadn't the strength to retrieve it myself, and without it I would surely die of starvation. Trap in hand, the man went back inside his house. He returned a moment later with something clutched in his fist. This is for you. He dropped a golden ring into James' upturned palm, then snuck back into his house, closing the door behind him. Well, the ring we just got is a Ring of the Golden Way, which we'll check our stats, and what it does is it alters your scouting skill, so you're warned about ambushes. And yeah, James has built up quite a bit. Defense 68, melee 53, crossbow 57. Gosh, how shocking is it? Now, actually, it's going to be a little bit better because everybody is still recovering their strength from the trap from earlier. Yeah, you'll note that Goref's defense is 35, 37. So everybody's actual stats are much higher than that, and give them a chance to rest. And now we go back and look at it, and yeah, defense is slightly better at 68, so James was better off. Owen's defense is a remarkable 90, his melee is 66, casting is 63. Goref has a perfect assessment, and his scouting is about as good as James's without the magic ring enhancing it. So, yeah, at this point, take the south path out of the Dimwood. We'll wind up in the area close to the entrance of Sephanon, near Nia's Goods. And this was where I decided to stop for the day, because, well, we'd had a fair good bit of adventuring. And we'll end here. See you next time.